Hey there, welcome back to my kitchen. Today we're making a cozy, creamy fish chowder that's perfect for chilly nights or whenever you want a little bowl of comfort. This is flavorful, it's hearty, it's quick and easy to make, and it's full of nutrition too. Let's get cooking. The first thing we're going to do to make our fish chowder is to get a seafood stock going. And this part is optional, but if you have access to lobster shells, we live in a fishing community. It's lobster fishing season right now, so lobster is quite plentiful here. If you don't have lobster or lobster shells, don't worry about it, but I just happen to have lobster shells every time we have lobster. I save the shells, throw them in the freezer, and I have them for making seafood bases for things like chowder and risotto and that sort of thing. But no worries, if you don't have lobster shells or things like shrimp shells, don't worry about it. I'm just going to give you this as a tip for an extra flavor boost. This is the shells from 2 small lobsters. I have the tails. They've all been cleaned, but there's still a lot of flavor left in these shells. And we always pull off the little crawler legs too and save those for making seafood stock. So into my pot. And I should say, don't worry if you don't have lobster shells to work with. I'm going to give you a tip for making this without a seafood stock at all. It's still going to taste absolutely delicious. So into the pot with those shells. Crank up the heat to high, and I have a kettle of water that I boiled not too long ago, and I'm just going to pour enough water in to cover these shells. That's about a cup of water. So you can see inside the pot I have my lobster shells and just enough water to cover. There's probably about a cup and a half of water, and I'm going to cover this and let this pot boil for about 20 minutes. And while this is boiling, I'm going to peel my vegetables and get them prepped for the chowder. Our seafood stock is bubbling away on the stove, and like I said, if you don't have lobster shells stashed in your freezer for that purpose, you can still make a delicious chowder. Instead of using lobster shells to make your chowder base, I use this bouillon paste. This is seasoned vegetable base, and it's just very easy to stir into hot water. So I'd use the same amount of water, about 1.5 cups. And maybe since you're not using seafood shells, I'd use a heaping tablespoon of the vegetable bouillon. I'm still going to add a little bit to this chowder, even though I do have lobster shells, just to amp up the flavor. And a lot of this recipe, even though I'm going to give you specific ingredients, once you get the method down, you can jazz it up any way you like. So while the stock is simmering away, I'll go over the ingredients. So this is a fish chowder. I have some nice, fresh, local haddock. This is about 1 pound of fillets. And whenever it's on sale, I buy it and put it in the freezer. It's great to have on hand for quick meals like this. So 1 pound of haddock, whatever firm white fish you have access to in your community. It could be cod, it could be, I think tilapia is popular in some places. Again, we live in a fishing community. Haddock is what's readily available here. You could use halibut, cod as well. And for veggies, we have just an onion, about 3 large carrots, and 1 stalk of celery, and 4 potatoes. So while the stock is simmering away, I'm going to peel my potatoes, peel my carrots, chop everything up into cubes, and then everything will be ready to go in about 20 minutes when the seafood stock is ready. If you're not making a seafood stock, it'll go even faster. Prep all your veggies, boil about 1.5 cups of water, add your bouillon paste, add your veggies, cook them until they're tender, and then we're going to add the fish. So I'll get all this prepped and then we'll put it together. I've peeled all my veg, but I just wanted to make a quick point about the size of the cubes that you should be cutting your vegetables into. Everything should be nice and bite-sized or spoon-sized. You want to be able to have vegetables that are cut to a cube small enough that every time you dip in your soup spoon, you get a little bit of everything, or maybe most of everything. So, and the same for the potatoes. So I have 4 potatoes here. This is a weekday chowder or just an everyday chowder. I'm using a little bit more potato than I normally would in a luxurious seafood chowder, just to bulk it up, put some starch in there and make it feel a little more comforting and filling. When I'm making seafood chowder with all the seafood, lobster, scallop, shrimp, cod, haddock, I tend to hold back a little bit on the potatoes because I want the seafood to shine. I still want the fish to shine in this dish, but this is a more affordable, everyday family night chowder. So you can go ahead and use a little bit more potato if you like, just to stretch your dollar. But as I said, once you get the method down for making this, you can put in as few or as many potatoes as you want. So I have all my veggies ready. I've got my carrots chopped, my celery chopped, my potatoes chopped, and you might notice that I did not chop up my onion. I just peeled it, cut it in half. If you like bits of chopped onion in your soups and chowders, you can go ahead and chop it up. We like the flavor of onion in our chowder, but we don't like that texture of onion when it starts to sort of fall apart and get a little slimy in the chowder. So I'm just leaving this whole, and I'll show you what I'm going to do with it when we make the chowder. So hang on and I'll bring you over to the stove. Our seafood stock has been bubbling away and the shells have infused the water with a lot of seafood flavor. Take my spider or a slotted spoon, whatever you have, and just fish that out. That little amount of water contains so much seafood flavor. So as I mentioned earlier, you can still make a really flavorful base for your fish chowder just by using a little vegetable bouillon. I have bouillon paste. You can use bouillon cubes or powder or liquid, whatever you have on hand. So I'm still going to add a little bit of bouillon to my seafood stock just to bump up the flavor a little bit. So that's sort of a rounded teaspoon. If you're not using seafood stock, boiling lobster shells, shrimp shells, the whole shebang, if you're not using seafood stock, I would use twice the amount of bouillon. So 2 of these spoonfuls, but I'm just using 1. And I'm just going to stir that around in the hot stock. Give that a little whisk. Crank your heat back up. I had turned it to simmer when I was making my seafood stock. I'm just going to cover this and bring this back up to the boil. So that didn't take long. And now into the pot with all of our veggies. So we've got our potatoes, our carrots, our celery, and our halved onion. So just very carefully, you don't want that to splash on you. So give that a good stir and check the level of your stock. So it's not quite up to the surface of all those veggies. So I still have my kettle here of hot water. And I'm just going to add a tiny bit more water, just until the liquid level reaches the top of those veggies. Our heat is still at high. I'm going to put the cover on. Once this comes to the boil, I'm going to lower the heat to simmer, and then we're going to cook these veggies for about 10 minutes. And then I'm just going to stick the point of a knife into the vegetables and make sure they're tender. You don't want to overcook them at this point. So let's put the cover on, let these cook for 10 minutes at a simmer. The veggies have been cooking away, and now I'm going to just check them and make sure they're at the point of being tender crisp. I think they're ready. So if I take something on the knife point goes in quite easily. They're not quite done yet. That's exactly what we want. I'm just going to try a carrot too. The carrots are still a little firm. That too is what we want. So the next thing we're going to do is add our fish. So I have 1 pound of haddock fillets, and if you notice, I have not cut them up. These are very fresh, very delicate. I'm just going to place them right on top of our steaming hot vegetables. And as this fish cooks, it's all going to flake apart and become nice bite-sized chunks. So on with the cover. Let that cook maybe for 3 minutes, and then we'll come back and see if it flakes apart easily with a fork. And then we'll finish this off. Okay, this has been cooking now for about 3.5, 4 minutes. Let's check the fish. And yeah, it's starting to turn opaque. And see what I mean about it flaking apart beautifully, because this is incredibly fresh fish. So just break it apart. It's going to break apart as you stir it anyway. And stir that into the veg. Now at this point, our onions have done their job. Just fish out those onions. Unless you like them, leave them in. But our preference in our household is we just want them for flavor in our chowder. And we don't need them anymore. So out they go. Now you see how beautiful and thick this is, and the fish is flaking apart. And now I have 2 cups of light cream, and I'm just going to pour that in very gently, and we're going to let that heat through at a very low heat for about 5 minutes. So let that heat through covered for about 5 minutes. Our cream has heated through, and now we just have to put the finishing touches on our chowder and give it a taste. I'll bring this off the heat. Take the cover off and give it a nice stir. Yeah, everything is heated through. It smells fantastic. The final touches for this, some grindings of freshly cracked pepper. I find chowder can take a lot of pepper. That's probably about 3/4 of a teaspoon. Stir that in. And now you notice that we haven't added any salt at this point. Because I made seafood stock with lobster shells, there's a lot of salt in seafood shells actually. So that has salt. The bouillon base that we used, that has some salt. So at this point, I'm going to give this a taste. And if it needs salt, we can add it. It might not need anything at all. That's perfect just the way it is. I don't think it needs any salt whatsoever. So finally, just to gild the lily a little bit, chowder is lovely with just a nice knob of butter melted in at the last moment. And I'm just going to let that melt into the pot. And this is entirely optional, but it's nice to have a little green garnish. So I have some leaves of flat leaf parsley here. I'm just going to quickly run my knife through those. And just a little bit, just to add some nice freshness. So we've added some lovely touches with our butter and our flat leaf parsley, and now this is ready to go. That didn't take long at all. You have a beautiful, hearty, homemade fish chowder. Garnish this with a little more parsley. You can see all the goodness in there. We've got a beautiful, thick chowder base. The potatoes have broken down just a little bit and thickened that broth. It's all flavored with carrots and celery and onion and seafood shells and vegetable bouillon and nice bits of fresh fish. And all we need is a pan of homemade biscuits. Wouldn't that be just divine right about now. But I'm just going to give this a taste. Try and get a little bit of everything on my spoon. And this is piping hot. Don't burn my mouth. So good. So many simple ingredients, vegetables that you probably have in your pantry, fish that you could have frozen in your freezer, and a beautiful chowder that really, if you come on a vacation to Nova Scotia, this is very similar to what you'll get in any restaurant. That bowl is hot, so I'm going to put a pot holder underneath it. This is such a beautiful weeknight chowder, but really you could serve this to company too. This is family friendly, company friendly, comes together quickly, uses fresh ingredients that you probably have in your kitchen already, and it's just scrumptious and good for you. I hope you'll give this recipe a try. Send me some comments. I love hearing from you. Thanks so much to all of you who have subscribed to my channel. If you haven't already, I'd love it if you would join me here every week. I'm going to be having a nice focus on seafood this winter. We have so much beautiful fresh fish in Nova Scotia where I live, and I'd love to share some traditional recipes with you. So thanks so much for watching. I'm going to tuck into the rest of this. Oh, this keeps well in the fridge for a couple of days. In fact, I always think it tastes better the next day after it's had a chance to sit and have the flavors all come together. You can certainly eat it right out of the pot the moment it's cooked, but leftovers are even better. And you'll be so glad that you have this waiting for you on a busy day. So, thanks so much for watching. Bye for now.